Welcome, everybody, to Strictly Speaking. These are Conversations with Theater Makers. I am Jamie Mellema, and I'm the resident scenic designer for University Theater. We're so happy to have you joining us tonight. I want to say thank you to all who have tuned in so far and are supporting the arts here at NC State and University Theater. Our guests tonight are Anna and Paul Nugent, the co-artistic directors of About Face Theatre in Dublin. That's Ireland. Anna and Paul. Mostly, I'm just excited to chat with y'all. And I think this is a great excuse to talk to people I haven't seen in a very long time. Because we have known each other, like I've known Anna since 1995.
Yeah, thereabouts.
I know, I'm like turning red thinking about it.
I know.
But yeah, it's been a long time. And I haven't actually seen you since probably, 2008 or 9.
Yeah.
So it's so good to see you. Okay.
It's good to see you too. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah. So how are you guys doing? How is the land of Ireland and COVID and the theater making there these days?
Well, we're in our second lockdown. So we had a lockdown there for quite a few, 3 months?
Yeah, about 3 months.
And everything was just closed down. There was really only essential services, like all schools and everything were closed. And then we were doing pretty good. Theaters were starting to open, small, very small. The audiences at a third of the numbers, if that. A lot of people were planning, for outdoor or something, trying to find some alternative ways where they could host more people. And then how many weeks ago? Just when we were going into like the Dublin Theatre Festival, which is like the international theater festival of big, there's a big theater time here where we have the Fringe Festival and then we have the International Festival in October. And just before they launched, we went into
a second lockdown from now until like December 1st. So people had struggled to pull together little plans for shows and projects that could work in like unusual spaces and outdoors and semi-digital stuff, and then everything just went because you couldn't even rehearsing was like out the window.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, we are lucky though in that there's been some kind of live streaming theater, especially for smaller cast things, in that because there is a loophole in that this lockdown, people working on broadcast have been given part of the essential kind of services. Oh, cool. But our schools are also open, so it's very different from the first lockdown.
Sure. So I noticed that you guys at About Face are doing November.
Yes.
Is that still happening, the new play festival you're doing?
We completed it. So that was one thing where we had to move online. Or we decided to move online rather than postpone it. We just decided to go for it. So we did it completely digital, which was very different. It was our 9th year doing the festival. So it was the first year where it was completely digital. And so, so what we don't usually have as an opportunity, but we're going to have is we're going to be able to share them. So we'll be offering them again for like a limited time for people to watch.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. 4 really great new plays.
That's excellent. Yeah, I saw the listings for them. They seem really great. What are the pluses and minuses that you've been finding of Zoom plays?
Well, I think the biggest thing we found to begin with, particularly for actors who are not used to it, is the connection. I think it's the connection. Obviously, you're missing the connection with the audience. You don't hear the laughs. You don't have the applause. You don't have that sense of that. Are you holding them? Are you not? It's really a vacuum. But I think too, even for the actors, they've found because this is a play reading festival, so a lot of people would have had their scripts either sometimes printed out, but a lot of them would have had them as a PDF up on the screen. But then trying to act with the other actor, but find a place to put them on camera where you can actually play off them and stuff, and still have an eye line that looks natural to the audience. So I think that's probably been the toughest thing actually. Yeah, it's just that disconnection, with the Zoom format.
Yeah.
And I think what we've also learned though is you kind of embrace it, right? Because it is what we have. What we did learn going live then with we created this new thing called Transatlantic Tales. So there were little bite-sized pieces. So we really tried to embrace the form, right? Okay, so now it's set on a Zoom call. So we had one actor in the States and one actor in Ireland. I think that just, we started to learn the language, because you know how stage has a language, right? There's as an audience, you don't think about it, but you understand things, especially theatrical language, where say I'm standing here and Paul is standing next to me. He's looking up, I'm looking down. So we're actually talking to each other on a balcony or across the street, but we are standing next to each other on the stage, right? But
Right.
it's a language that as a spectator, as an audience member, you're like, oh, I know what's going on. And that's the bigger stage, right? In that box or whatever. So then Zoom is its own box with its own language.
Yes.
So we're learning that, and we still are learning that, but one of the directors commented on one of the actors who had been with us. He'd been doing all the tech and everything, and the way he was able to use his box was, like reacting to things in the box, and he just seemed to have embraced the language. So I think that's because it's not TV and film either. It's a different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as instructors and teachers and things are trying to figure out in a very similar way, in which it's like, yeah, the same thing. Like, you're missing the connection. Like, it's difficult with students, and then it's also like learning how to communicate differently in this way. So yeah, so I feel you. Is what I'm saying. So Transatlantic Tales sounded like a really cool project that really embraced the format. Were those plays written specifically for Zoom then, right?
Yeah.
We basically got 8 playwrights that we knew from previous November festivals, and basically gave them the prompt, which was like, we pulled 2 actors out of a hat, one in New York or other parts of the States, and one in Ireland, and said, these are your 2 actors. Write a 3-minute play, and it has to be set on a Zoom call between the States and Ireland. Everything else you can do whatever you want, but that's your prompt, and yeah, go and run with it.
Yeah,
that's a really fun idea. That's great.
Yeah, it ended up being really, it's amazing too when you give people parameters, what they can come up with. And I'm sure you know this as a designer yourself, that like you don't want restrictions, right? As like creatives, we want like all the money and all the supplies or whatever and all the time. But when we're given those restrictions, sometimes something really beautiful can emerge.
No, I totally know what you're talking about. And I think, yes, like, I want the restrictions. Give me the restrictions, because they give me somewhere, like, having the world of choices be so wide open is actually paralyzing compared to like, okay, I know the little sandbox I'm working in, or ocean, whatever it is, at least I understand its boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's obviously changed how things have been going at About Face, I'm sure. Are there other aspects that have changed there besides?
Yeah, well, we were lucky enough to be the resident theater company at a brick and mortar and actual theater space in Dublin, which so this year was our first year being resident artists. So Carpentier.
Physical theater to work in. Home.
So needless to say, we haven't been there very much, but like they were great with helping us on November. They were really instrumental on that, and they've been really supportive and trying. We're not the only resident artists there, so we've all been trying to talk throughout and like see what the needs are, what we're gonna aim for next year. And we have been on occasion been able to go there and work, like during when we were only at level 3 instead of level 5, we could go there and work and meet some new actors and things. So
that's cool. So what is a typical day like for you guys now versus maybe before?
I think that it's that funny thing of not being of being, and everyone feels this now, but being very contained. Whereas previously you were going to, like, for November, like last year, was the first time we did it between 2 venues in Dublin. We had one that was in the city centre and the Civic, where our residence, which is more suburban. and then we had a different space that was where we were rehearsing. So we had this last year. We were going to the rehearsal space and doing things there, and we had different casts coming in and crossing over, and just running around and doing those things, and then shifting everything to one venue and doing two readings there that day, and then switching, driving and going to the next venue,
Right. That's a lot.
so it's like it was all these different places, and like in November, as an example of one of our productions, is like the one that probably has the most artists involved at a time.
Yeah.
It's usually around maybe 30, like between actors, writers, directors, and stuff. It's usually around 30 plus artists who are all coming in and out, working on 4 or 5 different plays. So that kind of sense of that buzz and interaction is one of the things that's amazing about the festival. But it's just and it's great that we still get to work with all the actors, but it's much more contained.
Yeah.
Everyone on their computers in their own spaces. I think
there's no going to the pub after the show for the chat. I mean, it's great because you're home, like, which I'm a homebody, so I really love that. Like, oh, play's over. Okay, the couch is right there, so no travel. But those kind of things, because that's a real big, just the time to even between shows when you're like running and grabbing a coffee and those are the times where you're bonding and you're getting to know people. And we have a class that we teach that we moved online, and one of the actors in it this week was actually saying, can at our 10-minute break, does anyone want to just stay on and like chat like we would in a real class, like when we're like just like when we're passing by, can we just do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've talked a number of times, or I've been to a number of like training things about dealing with teaching and Zoom and things, and that kind of connection with people is something they talk about quite a bit. Like, add extra time to be able to just like be together, like for that extra communication. You have done a lot of different theater jobs between the two of you. You've directed and performed and written and TV and theater. How did both of you first get involved in theater to begin with?
Well, I'm one of those like very early adapters, in that when I was quite young, I loved finding any opportunity I could to be on the stage or create a stage or whatever that may be. So, I mean, even in first grade or kindergarten or something, we did Three Little Bears, and I had my little ears on my headbands, and in 4th grade I was Jackie and the Cornstalk, so that was maybe my to date. Yeah. So I got involved with that. I think my dad had like a band, and they did skits and stuff like that. So I think that from a young age I was kind of exposed to performance and seeing the joy that can bring people and the connection. So so I was interested in it from very early on, and did drama through high school and in college, and so I was one of those who just has been going on, and that's that there you see, it's our very first show with About Face. Who are those babies? Oh, nearly 18 years ago.
Wow, that's 2002.
Over 18 years ago.
18 years ago.
That's always a shock, isn't it?
Yeah.
Desperate.
Yeah. But Paul's story is different.
Well, yeah, I was like, it's funny, I wasn't a theater kid at all. I kind of look at these, I see all these kids doing in like Dublin youth theater and things now, and I'm so jealous, because I would have loved, I think, when I was 14, 15 to have been going and doing acting stuff and doing plays at that age. I would have loved it. I would have been finding my tribe even earlier. But I didn't really have any access to that. I thought it was all singing and dancing stuff when I was a kid. So it wasn't something I really thought about. Though I think there was performance things I didn't realize at the time. Myself and a friend, we used to like record a radio show on tape cassettes. And looking back at it, I think I took it very seriously, the story thing and retaping things if I wasn't happy with how the first one went. But yeah, so the first time I really fell in love with theater was my final year of high school here in Dublin, and our English teacher proposed one day that he had this funny reverse psychology, because every year there was a play put on in our final year of high school, and he kind of stood up in front of our English class one day and said, "Yeah, I don't think we're going to do a play this year. You guys don't seem very interested." And it was this great reverse psychology thing where we hadn't even been offered the opportunity, but he was already putting this kind of flame underneath us, going, "We had to want it." And we were like, "No, no, no, we want to do it. We totally want to do it. No, it's crazy. We're not going to be the first year that doesn't do it." And then, so yeah, I auditioned for a part in it, kind of on a complete whim. It was Juno and the Paycock by Sean O'Casey. So a real classic Irish play. And I got cast as Johnny Boyle, who's was an amazing first part for an actor because I was missing an arm, I had a limp, I see a ghost, and you know I have a great death scene. And it's like for like the first time I ever did a show, and yeah, and I just I fell in love with every.
That's Oscar material there.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's probably the best part I've ever had.
Right.
But yeah, so that fell in love with it then. You know, every aspect of it. You know, from the walking back home with my friends after rehearsals. You know, and doing loops the block to keep talking about a scene or an accent or something, up to drinking on the stage on our last night. You know, that was, everything about it was great.
They can drink younger over there.
Yeah.
Right.
It was legal.
Right, of course. Well, that transitions nicely to this next question, which is, so both of you have worked both in the States and in Ireland. Do you find those things, like those spaces, different, or as performers or as producers? Like, is your approach different, I guess, maybe is the better way of putting it.
Well, I think our approach isn't that different, but it is different for definitely as an actor experiencing it. Also production, like things move at a different pace in Ireland. The social element and aspect, I mean, it's important both places, but I think in Ireland it's even more important. Would you say? No? He's looking at me.
I'm not 100% sure what you mean.
No, I think that there's a core kind of approach that's slightly different, right? Like especially like New York stage acting and stuff like that versus the more European, definitely, Ireland to fall into that category of acting. I think it's obviously major generalization, so this doesn't apply universally, but like you even get it a sense in the writing, right? The writing in the different countries, like the writing in the UK versus the writing in Ireland versus the writing in the States, like you can see that in the States there really is that exploration of feeling and emotion and who is this person and the individual, and in the UK there's definitely a theater of thought and ideas and you're looking at me.
No, I think you're right. No, absolutely.
Like maybe I'm just making these generalizations on my own, And then Ireland is a country of poetry and of language, and oftentimes there's an adept. The language is so important, and different people in different parts of the country use language in a different way, and so I think that. So that's in the writing, right? But I think that trickles down too, and how people are trained, and then how they respond to the call of acting or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I had a really interesting experience. We actually both did. We did the same show in New York, and it toured to a theater in Sussex in England. A show called the McGowan Trilogy. So we both have been in it, and in the States, we just done it in New York with the actors there, and it'd been just the natural process of rehearsing and putting it together.
It was a brand new play, so yeah. Paul was a part of it from the very, very beginning, from new writing. We love new writing.
Yeah. But then we took it to the UK, and actually myself and Anna were the only two actors who came across with it. They recast the other parts locally in the UK. Same director, everything else, same designer, everything else is the same. And I think the director, Ciara Simmering, had a culture shock when she got the actors, the UK-based actors in the room, who were a mix of Irish and English actors, because they were like, technique came to them very easy. They were very well trained. And so doing technical things was not a problem for them at all. Like one of the first days, we were doing a kind of just a read through, and I was playing kind of an IRA, assassin character. And at one point turn to one of the directors and just
Irish Republican Army, for those those who don't know, it's not a
not a tax
fake
accountant.
term. Yeah.
But so at one point I turn around and spoiler alert, I shoot one of the characters. In when we were just in the rehearsal, like literally we still had scripts in hand, and I just kind of pointed my finger at him and went bang, and the actor who was playing it just like flew his script in the air and flew and fell over and landed on the ground, did this like great death fall, and it was like I at the corner of my eye I glanced over at Kira, and she was just like, because it had taken her weeks with one of the actors in the New York thing to get him to be happy with the physical thing. He got psychological things straight away, no problem working out the psychological side of the character, but some of the technical things about the stage fights and stuff like that, he was just like, I'm not getting this. Whereas with the exact opposite in the UK, all the technical stuff, no problems. But actually getting some of the psychological stuff was harder for her to get across.
That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask
that's
about
not universal.
No.
I mean, like there's actors and different actors approach things differently, but that's kind of what we found is there is a different,
You see there's definitely an influence of the theater style and technique.
Absolutely. And and we trained together, so we like Paul and I were in the same drama class. That's how we met. And so we would kind of have a core that's quite similar.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though we're very different as actors and how we work and how we approach. Yeah, very different.
Okay.
So DJ is asking, other than theater, and this is maybe more of a question for Paul, was there much culture shock with the move to New York?
Ooh, good question, DJ.
That's a great question, DJ. First, we moved from Dublin to Boston for a year, and I kind of got out and started doing some regional theater auditions and stuff there. So that was initially a small culture shock because the American theater system was very different, especially auditioning. Like for actors who maybe are going to go on and become equity actors, they have these, these AEA auditions, these kind of open call auditions for equity actors. We don't really have in Ireland. You're auditioning, you call people, you have auditions if you're definitely casting something. Whereas this was like auditions, maybe even if they weren't casting it, they were still going to hold auditions. And I was, getting in our car and driving around New England, with directions printed out
from MapQuest.
This is a long ago.
Back in the day.
and driving to auditions and things. And so that was kind of a bit of a culture shock. But then I think, when I arrived first thing in New York, it was massive culture shock.
And his first thing in New York, now he moved on his own because he was cast in something at the Irish Rep, in Irish Repertory Theater in New York. So that was his first experience of New York, was performing.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, that was, I got cast in this show in New York, and so moved down there before Anna could move down with me. And so, I had the combination of the culture shock of New York itself, living in the city for the first time, while also working at an off-Broadway company. And I think that was, the funny thing was, you're so like, it's a combination of me. I was so excited to be there, and you so want to make it work that you kind of almost block a lot of that out. You kind of repress a lot of the culture shock until like after that show was done, and we'd been living in New York for about 6 months. I think then I had a bit of a culture shock. Like I kind of let myself feel it. I think, and then when I went home for Christmas that year, I was like, oh, Dublin is so different. Like Dublin and New York, the pace of life, everything felt so different.
Yeah, we missed the because the pubs close here early, but the public transportation stops before the pubs close, or at least it did then. So we were used to New York where like 24 hours a day you can use transit. So we were like enjoying our Christmas drinks, and like, what? It's like midnight. What are you talking about? We can't get home.
And actually, I'll tell you, Jamie, one of the biggest pieces of culture shock was with an equity stage manager for rehearsals for the first show in New York. That they were like super blocked out about how many hours you could work before you had to take a break. If you worked for an hour, you had to take a 5-minute break, 2 hours, 10-minute, whatever exactly it was. And so we kept in the initial part of the rehearsals, kept doing all these, like, we'd work for an hour and a half, then take a 10-minute break. And it wasn't what I was used to. In an Irish rehearsal room, you come in at the start of the morning, you rehearse for maybe an hour and a half, and then you have a tea break. And maybe 15, 20 minutes, enough time to make tea, have a bit of a chat, have a biscuit, do the same again in the afternoon. So I had to like I had to kind of like negotiate with equity stage managers and the rest of the cast, kind of going, could we go for like an hour and a half and then take a 15-minute break? Would that be okay with everyone if we had long enough to make a proper cup of tea? Is that, you know, and every actor is different. Some are like, no, I don't want to have a 15-minute break. That's too long for me.
So there you have it, DJ. The biggest culture shock is
Tea break.
tea break.
That is hilarious. That's great. That was a good question, DJ. Yeah, I was gonna ask something similar about transitioning back and forth.
Yeah, it's a big transition because at this stage, like my book collection has moved across the ocean like 4 or 5 times. So I was like, why? But they're my books. I need
Gotta
them.
pare it down.
But we did, like we pared it down. This last move back from New York, we got rid of, gosh, 2/3 of our book collection.
Oh yeah, that was vicious.
But it's the plays. Like even though like I can get them again, for some reason it's like, but I got this play at this used bookstore in this city, and everything has a memory attached to it.
Probably to us, you had probably as big of a culture shock because you came to train here,
Hmm.
and that Dublin must have been was definitely a culture shock for you when you came
Yeah.
here to train.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard for me to remember
Yeah.
back that far. And for me at that stage, survival was the biggest thing. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay to survive or to live in this city. So that was probably bigger than the culture shock,
Yeah, the stress.
Yeah. But I do remember the very first thing, just the pronunciations and things like that, like key in Ireland. So the Keys, which is along the Liffey, the river in Dublin, is spelled Quay. So I was like, I'm going to the Quay. So I remember that like straight off first day.
Someone corrected you.
Yeah. So, and I'm still
remember-
learning, even however many years now that I've lived over here, I'm still really learning about Ireland and what it is to be Irish.
Yeah. Well, you're honorary now.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you've been there long enough.
Yeah, if you add all the years together.
Adam is wondering
Yeah.
what you've been doing to satisfy your performance needs.
Yeah, that's
So
a
maybe a
great
quick
question
question,
because Adam, we do have performance needs. So, I think that's part of the reason why in June we did Transatlantic Tales, because I didn't perform, I directed it all. But Paul did, and in November also I directed one, and Paul was in one this year. So I think that's kind of what you've done. There was a brief surge when we came out of auditions, so that was quite fun. There was a casting director here who was providing a monologue challenge every week. So there was a new monologue to work on your self-taping, which was good. And I did get cast in a show but just as we went back into lockdown, they had to postpone the first week of production, and I was scheduled for the first week. So I'm hoping that it's going to be rescheduled for December. So it's a really fun kids show. Yeah. So, but we take every opportunity. And Adam, for me, I teach as well, and that it's not performance per se, but it does. I do find that directing now at this stage is starting to fulfill some of the same needs that I have. Rather than creating a character and building that life, I'm helping to build the world. So, and as you can see, I'm quite hands and performance anyways. So that helps me. Anything else, do you think?
Well, I'd say it's a funny thing, Adam. I think it's one of the things about that someone's really an actor when they have that performance need, when they're missing it desperately, getting to perform. And we have been lucky enough to kind of over time here, since we've moved back to Dublin, to kind of build a kind of little ensemble of actors that we've kind of worked with on little projects and bits and pieces again and again. And it's really interesting. We hear, like, I know both of us as actors feel that urge, and we feel it. We hear it from all of our actors that we work with, that they get to a point where they're longing. They just want to do any kind of performance, even the imperfect things.
Yeah.
So like we have this monthly thing called the Great Plays Gang, where we did for a couple of years, where we used to get together in a pub and read a great play with a bunch of our cast over a few drinks. And then when lockdown happened, we had to keep that going because people still needed it. So we moved
Yeah,
that.
I'd say that's the biggest thing for me actually, Adam, is the Great Plays game. Keep going.
Yeah, so we kept moved that to Zoom and kind of did it on a monthly basis. And then some people wanted to delve deeper, so we added a scene study class, and now it's a mix of kind of our ensemble professional actors and some students. But you can see people, they're just sort of like, oh, so happy to get to act, and especially act on good material. We're all trying to work in these areas where we'd all have to be in the room in a theater again. And the first time we're all going to get to do that again properly, because we love large cast shows. The next time we get to have eight or nine or 10 actors on it, it's going to be just bliss. Even everything else, we're not going to care if it's a drafty theater. We're not going to care if the play has flaws in it. We're not going to care if we have to start at 8 a.m. or whatever it is. It'll just be, everyone will be so happy to do the work. But yeah, I think I think you're dead right, Adam. There's a core need to express, to perform, to work with other actors. I don't think it's fulfilled really by like working on sides or monologues or stuff on your own. I think it feeds it a little bit. But there's something about being in the room and bouncing off each other and getting surprised by another actor, or working, on really good material, and that buzz. I think you got to find some way to do it. So
yeah, and we both do voiceovers as well, and voiceovers came back pretty. Some of the voiceover stuff came back pretty quick, so we were doing some of that. And there's this great little company in the UK that do this Jane Austen readathon. They were doing it for charity. So they read a whole of a Jane Austen book over a weekend. And so we participated in the last one, and they're going to do another one, Sense and Sensibility, I think, coming up soon. So hopefully we'll be able to participate in that too. So yeah, so basically, Adam, anything that comes across, we're like, yeah, okay, yeah. Oh yeah, you want me to read the menu? Yeah, absolutely. I got you.
Well, that's one of the handy things about having your own theater company, is that you can like invent things for yourself to do.
Yes.
Joseph's asking, how do you best manage areas of uncertainty in the production of a play? Like if you're not sure if something will work out well or fall through.
Ooh, that is a great question, Joseph. That is, wow. I think so. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So this is particularly a question that makes me go. But one of the things that I love about Paul and how he works and approaches theater, and how we, and now as a company, try to approach, is with a lot of grace, which is, forgiveness and openness to possibility, and a lot of play. So it's, and boy, Joseph, things do fall through. Like, you think you have a designer and you're 3 weeks out from the production, because we're smaller theater companies, so sometimes our production lengths and planning times are shorter, and you literally have to find someone, and you're like, 2 days into, we're in rehearsals and we don't have a designer, so we try to do it with just deep breaths and grace and trust in the theater gods that somehow it will work out, because it always surprises you, you think that it's the end of the world, and then once the production is all over with, you're like, oh, I couldn't imagine it another way. We wouldn't have found this amazing person if it weren't for the fact that we were absolutely desperate and called every single person we ever worked with in the past 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's the funny thing is, obviously there's an uncertainty. I think theater is always going to have that. But I think looking back, it's funny, we've had some crazy experiences, some apparent disasters in the final weeks of rehearsals. We've had deaths in people's families. Yeah. We've lost actors. We've had to, venues were not what we thought they were going to be. But it's funny that those really tough times, I think, when we've had to really struggle and we've been up against the wall, or, to the point where you're, maybe you're scrapping with each other, they're fighting with each other because you're in such a stressful place. When we look back on it, I think it's funny how those have always been the moments that have bonded us and made production stronger. One of the productions we did, the Irish premiere of the Laramie project many years ago, and we had a fantastic cast. It was a brilliant cast, and our director did a lot of ensemble work and did a lot of Michael Chekhov based work with the actors. There's a lot of building all these their kind of the physical gesture of their characters and all that kind of stuff. I love that photo.
It's Paul.
And that's it. Hope Brown,
Hope
Nani
Brown.
Stapleton, and Tara McKeever. We had a fantastic cast of 8, amazing cast, and Paul did some amazing work building this ensemble and developing all these different characters. And it was beautifully choreographed. It was a really lovely production. And then we had this just terrible thing happen when we were in our second venue, when one of the actors, her father was dying. And so she just came to us and was like, guys, I have to go. I have to go be with him. And we had to say, yes, of course. It was the only thing that mattered. It was like, oh, is this going to tear the heart out of the play? And then we kind of brought the other actors in and said, this is what's happening. What do we think we want to do? And we talked to the director.
Like, do we shut it down?
We shut it down and just say, this is the end. This is just the way is it going to compromise the show? And then the directors were like, no, I think we can do it. And one of the other actors, Tara, was like, I think I can jump in and do some of her parts. And then the other actor said, I could do one of her other bits.
You mean me?
Yeah, you did too. So basically, we were already running the show, so we didn't have time to like stop it. We just, over the course of 24 hours, we re-rehearsed things in, and Tara just learned all these like scenes in the course of like 12 hours, 16 hours.
Amazing.
Because she didn't go on with a script in hand, she just learned them. And so we went on that night with 7 people, and it was a beautiful production. It was a beautiful performance.
Because it was both an honor to the actors who couldn't be there, right? As well, because she would have been heartbroken to have the play end, so it was one of those that it was like, we're doing it for her as well. It's a gift to her, as well as honoring the commitment to the audience and everything.
So I kind of like, that could have been disastrous, but I also look back on that, the way that we resolved that and then performed on for the last few performances, with a lot of pride and happiness, that almost I wouldn't have wished that, but the fact that it happened and the way we were able to respond to it and the way that all of our team and cast and stuff did is kind of a great thing.
Yeah. And I think how you react to that, right, how you deal with uncertainty, how you deal with things not going how you planned, I think that does defines you in the end. It over years, those decisions and those which is easier to see now at this stage in our career than maybe it was early on, but you can see how that does define who you are, and it just defines like who About Face is as a company too, and who we are to each other.
Yeah, I've always found that like, if something is a weakness for a show, as a designer, if like this part is the part that's like, if it's the money and not enough money is the weakness, or if it's just the script or whatever it is like, okay, I'm going to lean into whatever this weakness is and make it the strength. How do I find that thing that makes it, instead of feeling like a mistake, like the choice and the defining choice, like.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes. It doesn't always work, but at least that's the goal.
Yeah, but I think that's a great approach.
Yeah. So speaking of your company, how did you decide to create your own company, and how did you sort of get that dream going?
Well, we were in a production of Hamlet that we didn't love, and so, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful to be in it. I was like, I got to play Ophelia, which was amazing. And it was like such a gift to get to do that. Because I love Shakespeare, but I don't get to do it very often. And so the two of us, as well as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, we were just talking at one point in time backstage, and we're just like, I don't want this to be like, because one of them, it was another American, and he was going back to the States, and he's like, I don't want this to be the last, theater experience I've had. Like, we could do something good. Let's do something.
And so Todd was his name, and Todd had a script of On the Timing by David Ives. So he said, why don't we just put this on? It's like, we can do like the 5 sketch from this. We get myself and my girlfriend Tara together, the 5 of us could put this on, we could play all the different parts. great, we'll direct each other, it'll be fine. And so we said, sure, fine, let's do it. Yeah, in the innocence of youth, we decided to put it on, and we put it on for like a week, 2 shows a day, around lunchtime in this little theater called the International in Dublin, which is a tiny theater above a pub in the center of the city. And it was like,
We talk a lot about pubs, I'm noticing.
well, we're Irish, come on.
I know. I'm like,
this is no great surprise.
Yeah.
this is not a shock to me.
I'll accept the stereotypes.
Having been there, I get it.
But they're great pubs. Let's be clear.
Absolutely.
So we put it on. It was like, and it was a blissful kind of summer week, and we all like invested money in it to put it on, and we made enough of a profit on the show. We made a profit on a theater show enough that we could buy ourselves a round of drinks at the end of the show.
So, that's us hooked, right? Never since, never again, have we made a profit on a show. But we were hooked. Yeah. So it really did come from that desire, because and I think that's what we've learned over the years, right? Especially for the two of us. Like, we thought of ourselves as actors, but we realized we weren't content just to, because as an actor, you have to continually work on your craft, but you're also waiting often between roles, and sometimes it's years between roles, and then sometimes everything comes at once, so we weren't content to wait. We wanted to. It kind of speaks to what now I'm going to forget if it was Joseph or who it was who asked about that need. What do we do for that need to perform? And I think that we started a theater company. It's the short answer to that. And then we just kept going because we loved it. We loved working with each other. We loved finding plays that hadn't been done before in Dublin, and that we were excited about, and with roles that we were excited to play. And it just kept going.
And I think too, we started to fall in love to a certain extent with also the roles of being producers. So it's a lot of fun to start to find it's really fun to bring people together.
Oh, we love that.
It's really fun to and that's become such a pleasure over the years to bring this person in the cast, and then suddenly you start to you get introduced to a designer, and you bring that designer in, and then you get also at the start we didn't really know what we were doing, so we always brought directors in. We direct more now, and that was kind of I think we know a little bit now.
Years.
But initially we brought directors, so it was always bring a lot of other artists in to work with us, and so that's a real pleasure. And then as you start to know people, then you start to think the next shows, you start to wonder then you have sort of ideas about, if we do this show, we cast this person and get this designer and this director, wouldn't that be great? And it's also just that lovely feeling too of when it goes well, when you kind of are we made this happen. And that's a really lovely warm feeling that you can stand in front of the show and be proud of it. And when you're in a buzzy, when the theater is a buzz afterwards of people who have really enjoyed the show, and that's a really pleasurable experience. But it's funny, I think that now it would be hard for us to give up either role. I think we're very much actor producers. I think if you told us you could be one but not the other, we'd be like, I'm gonna have a fight with you about that. I think both those roles.
Well, or we just were like, I'm just gonna focus on being an actor, and then literally a week later, I'm I want to do. Did you see this play? We can't stop ourselves from wanting to produce stuff,
Yeah.
So, and I see JJ has a question there,
yes.
and so Great Plays Gang, about our Great Plays Gang, and just asking, is it strictly for actors? So. No, we've had playwrights join us before. We did have a guest once that was completely unrelated, and they just watched. But we haven't. They really are just on the night. People, the actors who are there, just basically everyone gets given a card, and then whoever has the highest card gets to choose what role they play. So it's not rehearsed at all. It's just cold read. You don't know what part you're going to get. Play, have fun, go for it. So really it is for actors. So we haven't yet brought audience in, but we probably will at some stage when it is more rehearsed. But as I said, we have had people that were just spectating that just love hearing plays read aloud. So we're pretty much open to people being there.
To just come and watch the process, I think, and just watching actors work. I think it's not designed for an audience because it is designed really for the actors' play reading stage to work, and when we do the scene study, again, it's to work. But so it's
Like
not
people experiment with accents and things like, people are just playing.
exciting for someone to watch from the outside.
Mm.
But someone who's interested in the process, I'm sure that we would
Yeah.
be happy to let someone in to
Yeah, we do a reading series with the students, so we'll read plays, and so
Brilliant.
they'll do like Act 1 one night, like on Monday night, and then Act 2 on Thursday night, and it's open for people to come and read or come and just listen. And
Fantastic.
it's been really fun, and the
Yeah.
students really enjoyed that. And it's been all over the place, from like new plays or student written plays, or to like Macbeth. So
That's
it's
great.
been a good project for us for
Yeah.
similar reasons, for our
Yeah.
students to perform and do things and get together.
Yeah, keeping active, and also it's just so good the more you read, as far as plays, and it's so nice to hear plays out loud.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
In fact, DJ, who asked the question, is one of our readers. And
Oh, brilliant! Hey, DJ.
Yeah, he's done a great job.
And I think actually one thing about, we've been doing Great Plays Gang now for over 3 years, and it's funny how I've fallen in love with some playwrights I didn't love before from reading them aloud.
Interesting.
It's funny, like
that's really cool.
Reading them on the page is so different to hearing them read aloud.
So we're getting close to the end.
I know, I can't believe it. I could go on. I want to keep chatting.
It flies by so fast, y'all. So I'm gonna ask the question we usually ask at the end is about advice. So like, what would you say to students or others who are starting out in the field, who are interested in performance or maybe creating their own company? What one piece of advice would you give people? It's a hard question.
Do it.
Just do it.
Well, I would say one piece of advice. I think the one lesson that we learned early on from a producing point of view, this is just from producing, is that if you're going to put something on, the most important thing is that you love the script.
Yeah.
Because producing, we have found, is 90% grunt work and about 10% creativity and fun. Like most of it, most of the work is administration and organization and paperwork and emails. And
if you love doing that, fair play, and come on over to Ireland, because we have got a job for you.
But the fun stuff, the casting and the rehearsals, and that's a part of it. But so much of it is that. So we found that definitely that on those tough Tuesday afternoons, when you're just waiting for someone to get back, and this is tough, and you got to do this, fill out this piece of administration, and you just got a quote from the insurance people and all that stuff. Like when you just have a little flash of like, oh, the play, oh, but yeah, once we get to do the play, then it's going to make it worth it. So, and I've seen people put on shows for other reasons, for like there was a role that was going to showcase them, or they felt like it was the cool thing to put on, or other reasons, and you can see it suddenly they kind of the energy falls out of it when it gets tough, and it certainly can burn you from ever producing again if you do something like that, I think, because you find it's just too hard. But I think we've always managed to be in love with the play before we decided to press the button on going ahead and producing, and I think that is the one lesson I would hope to carry forward for us too, is to never fall in the trap of not following that kind of mantra.
Yeah. And I know I flippantly kind of said do it, which is kind of funny because most people when they're giving you advice, it's especially in this field, it's like you have to really don't do it unless you really really want to, and but I actually really do kind of feel like if you have any inkling in it, if you have any kind of passion for it, explore it, try it out. Like, we don't live in a society where you're stuck in one job for the rest of your life, like you don't know unless you try, you might fail. Great. You'll learn something, you'll grow, you'll know something even more about yourself than you did before. And, you'll learn, but if you have the desire, follow it. Try it.
You never know.
You never know. You might end up in Ireland, married to some
you might end up in Ireland.
Stranger things have
And
happened.
I feel like there's a lot of different tiers too. Like I think everybody's like, oh, the Broadway is the goal or whatever the goal is, right? It's always so high. Like the goal can also be just like that school play, or the goal can be your community theater or whatever it is. Like,
Absolutely.
as
Oh
long
my
as you're
goodness. And
having fun and you're doing it because you love doing it, that's the important part.
absolutely, there's so many different levels, and that's when we moved back here, back to Ireland. Because part of it is we were in New York, we were loving what we were doing, it was amazing, but we were also like having full-time jobs or part-time jobs as well to keep everything going, and so it didn't feel like we were just actors or doing, And so when we moved back here, my mantra was kind of do what I love, do what I love, do what I love, and it's like so just keeping taking steps for doing what I love, and it kind of brings you sometimes a little bit different places, but like my life now is filled more with theater than it ever has been before.
That's so great.
Yeah, which is a beautiful
Awesome.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for being here and doing this with us. This has been great. And thank you guys, to the audience for coming and joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks so
We're
much
glad
for
to have
having
you.
us.
Thank you again, you guys. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye
Cheers.
bye.
Bye.
Cheers.